Here's my review of the Pitt season 2. This season was great. With a show like this, it's always fascinating to talk about because this show obviously takes place all in one day, just like the first season, with each episode being an hour. Well, an hour in the show, not necessarily an hour in real life. But what's so good about this season, just like the first, is like just seeing all the real world like medical scenes, just seeing it all feel so very realistic is just so engaging and enthralling. And of course, these characters are just great. But with the main thing here that I guess kind of starts off, that kind of has the tension build throughout this show or this season, is the return of Dr. Landon after he got help for his drug addiction from season 1. And there's a lot of tension between him and Dr. Santos, as she is very upset that he's back and agrees, and she thinks that Dr. Landon should have lost his medical license. And because of that, there's just extra characters that just have tension. There's also another plot line. Like I said, I mean, shows like this, they have multiple plot lines of them just finding an abandoned baby, and their baby Jane Doe, and they have to basically take care of it. They don't know whose it is. They don't know who left it. And it's just very fascinating. It's just kind of got one more thing to deal with in this season when they're dealing always with all these patients. And I think this show just does a really good job of just getting you to care about the patients, because a character like Louis is really just a tragic character because he does die in this season. And you see how it's sad because from season 1, you kind of realize like he is just going against medical advice. It's just, he's a nice guy, but just tragically he's overweight. He's an alcoholic, and it's just sad. And then you see how Whitaker is very emotionally attached to this guy, and it just makes it sad. And that's what the show is able to do so well, is just get you to care about the patients as well as the doctors, and just making everything feel just so like moving. And there's also a couple like other plot lines. For example, with Mel, Mel's one of my favorite characters in the show. I think that she's great. And there's an episode where her sister comes in complaining from pain, and she has to help her sister. But then we find out that her sister, who has special needs, also Mel's very worried about Becca because Becca tells her that she's been having sex with this guy who she's been living with. And it's just, it puts Mel in a difficult situation, because although she is her sister and she loves her and takes care of her, she does have to realize that her sister is still an adult and she is not the legal guardian. And it just kind of makes her realize that in a way she could be growing apart from her sister. And it's sad because because this episode takes place on the 4th of July, like they had plans to watch the fireworks, and then it's not going to end up happening. But I think that's just what makes it so good. It's just these characters feel so real, and it's just these emotions work, and it just makes you care and feel sad. And I think that some of the new characters this season, like Joy and Ogilvy, are both great. I really like them both. Joy in particular, I think is just great because she's very snarky, but you could clearly tell that, of course, I mean, she is very smart. There is a plot line in this season where the power goes out for a couple of hours, and she is able to memorize all the names and what their problem is on the board before it goes out. And it's just fascinating. And a character like Ogilvy, I really like because he really prides himself on being this genius, and in many ways he is. And he's competing. In many ways, he's competing with Javati, who's the other kind of kid genius doctor in here. And it's great because I think they show a really good, I think it just kind of shows like a little mini character arc of, in a way, he kind of lets, because he is very smart, he kind of lets that define him and allow him to become arrogant. And he's kind of at tension with Javati, which is great because they're the two smartest people there, and they're both very young. But there's a scene where at the end of the season, he feels like he doesn't know if he can do this. And he's talking to Whitaker and just how stressed out he is. And it's just so great, just him humbling himself, even though, yes. And I love how Whitaker still like says something like, "You are a great doctor." Like, because he's considering quitting. And I hope he does, because I really like this character. But I just think it does such a good job of just making, I mean, it's a good character arc, a mini character arc of him learning more humility, even though he is a genius. and he is great at what he does, but when he makes a small mistake and does almost kill a patient, it's just, he really takes that to heart. And Whitaker is great as always. I really like him. There is also kind of a subplot where Whitaker is staying with this girl who he kind of sees, but then he's also living with Dr. Santos. And there's just some tension between there, and I think that it's all done really well. I just really like Whitaker. And there's some other really crazy scenes in this, like when we're dealing with crazy parents or patients, and then Nurse Emma gets attacked, and then because of that, there basically turns into a more plot because then she becomes the patient, and it's interesting to see the nurse become the patient. I will say, like, and I think that the baby kind of Jane Doe plot line, it feels unexplained because even at the end of this season, we, like, unless I missed something, like, we don't really know what's gonna happen to it, what's going to happen to him. So it'll be, or her, I guess, because, I mean, this show does end, or the season, but I don't think they establish who's taking care of the baby or what they're gonna do with him. And it's fascinating. I'm curious to see where that goes. I think that this season also does a really good job of also showing, in many ways, the flaws of the healthcare system, specifically in the United States, where there are patients where he is advised. This patient, for example, he comes in from his job to the hospital, and halfway through, he just leaves and he goes back to work because he realized he can't afford it, even though he goes against medical advice. And it's just tragic because it's just kind of just sets you in the realism of, about the people who can't afford medical care. And it's tragic because you do care about these patients and you just get attached to them, and it just makes it even more sad. And there's also a whole subplot about ICE, where sometimes, for example, they'll have patients that happen to be illegal immigrants, and then ICE will come in, and then Dr. Robbie is kind of arguing with ICE, saying, no, we technically have the legal authority as doctors to take care of anybody who needs help, and then ICE saying no, because she's not a U.S. citizen, that we have the authority. And it's just puts him in that tension. I really like how Robbie just kind of tells it to him. It's like, we are doctors, let us treat our patients. And I thought that was just a beautiful scene. It was great. What's just so good about this show is just how it gets you so attached to these characters. And of course, the intensity, obviously, that comes with a show like this, with it taking place in the emergency department, where every single episode we got maybe a new patient coming in, doing operations on him. But it still always finds time for the slow, intimate moments. Like I said, I think the scene towards the end with Ogilvy and Whitaker is great, because, I mean, I will say that Whitaker is one of my favorite characters. But Ogilvy, I really enjoyed this new character in a lot this season. And that's what the show does best at, is just making us care so much about these characters. And of course, just the show itself, due to its very nature, is just so intense, which just keeps it so engaging throughout, of us seeing them do these operations, having these patients come in where they need rapid help. And it's just emotional because, they don't save all the patients. And you see the toll that it takes on these doctors and nurses and surgeons. And it's just excellent. It really is an excellent show. I mean, in terms of comparing it to season one, I mean, I'd say they're both the same, like, in terms of quality, they're both great. And I'm so excited for season 3, because I think that the show is great. Probably the best show of the year so far. I thought it was fantastic. I think that all of the characters, the new characters, like Nurse Emma, Ogilvy, Joy, all great. The old characters, still great. Dr. Robbie, great. Santos. And it's just great. Like, I don't want to keep going, and obviously this review is almost over. But yeah, it really is a great show. I love the intensity. I love the character moments. And it just is a show that makes me feel good, but also scares me and makes me sad. And a great show could pull in so many great emotions. It's great.